Your soulmate secretly tested your honesty and broke down in tears when they found out. My beloved child, pause for just a heartbeat, because what you are about to hear was never meant to frighten you, it was meant to awaken something you have overlooked for far too long. There is a silent chapter unfolding behind the scenes of your journey, and every choice you have made recently has been quietly shaping an answer that someone has been searching for. You may think no one noticed your patience, your honesty, your refusal to become someone you are not. But someone did. And what they discovered changed them in a way they never expected. Stay with this story, because every sentence brings you closer to the hidden reason today's message found you. There are moments in life when the greatest truths are never spoken aloud. They are revealed through silence, through ordinary conversations, through decisions that seem too small to matter. Somewhere along their own path, your soulmate reached a point where uncertainty became louder than confidence. They wondered whether genuine people still existed. They questioned whether loyalty was only something people talked about but never truly lived. Instead of asking directly, they watched. Not to judge you, but to understand you. They paid attention to the little things that most people ignore. The way you treated someone who could offer you nothing in return. The promises you kept even when nobody would have known if you broke them. The honesty you carried when choosing the difficult path would have been much easier to avoid. And here's where everything quietly shifted. Without realizing it, you became the answer to a question they had carried inside for a very long time. What if integrity still exists? What if someone can remain true even when no one is watching? Those questions followed them every day. Every new observation became another piece of a puzzle they couldn't ignore. They expected disappointment because disappointment had become familiar. Yet every time they looked closer, they found another reason to believe differently. That realization unsettled them, not because it was negative, but because it challenged everything they had convinced themselves was true. Take a moment and think about this. How often do people recognize your character without ever telling you? How many battles have you fought quietly that nobody applauded? Sometimes the most valuable parts of you are invisible until someone desperately needs proof that goodness still exists. That proof became you. The strange part is that while you continued living your life, unaware of the impact you were making, another heart was slowly letting go of years of doubt. Every genuine action became evidence. Every honest response became another reason for hope to return. They never announced this silent test. They never placed impossible challenges in front of you. Life itself became the test, and your everyday choices wrote every answer without you realizing someone was reading them. Stay a little longer, because this is only where the deeper layer begins. The moment of realization did not arrive with dramatic words or grand celebrations. It arrived quietly, almost unexpectedly. One ordinary event connected every observation they had been collecting for so long. Suddenly everything made sense. Every act of kindness. Every difficult decision. Every time you chose honesty instead of convenience. The pattern became impossible to deny. And then something happened inside them that they never planned for. Their carefully built emotional walls began to crack. Not because someone forced them. Not because anyone demanded it. But because truth has a way of reaching places that fear can never protect forever. For so long they believed trusting another person would only lead to disappointment. They had convinced themselves that expecting sincerity was unrealistic. Yet your consistency refused to fit into that old belief. The more they reflected on your actions, the more they realized they had been preparing themselves for the wrong ending all along. Imagine carrying doubt for years, only to discover that hope had quietly been standing nearby the entire time. That discovery is powerful enough to leave anyone speechless. Before you move forward, ask yourself one honest question. What if your greatest strength has never been your talents? What if it has always been your character? That thought alone changes everything. Because character creates trust. Trust creates connection. And genuine connection changes destinies in ways no one can predict. The story doesn't end with what they discovered. It begins there. Something unexpected followed this realization, something so deeply emotional that even they could no longer hide what was happening inside. The moment they finally understood the truth about your honesty became the same moment they could no longer pretend their heart was untouched. What happened next, no one around them saw coming. And when that hidden moment unfolded, even they weren't prepared for the tears that followed. You won't want to miss what comes next. A quiet truth is about to surface, and once you hear it, the entire picture may begin to make sense. What seemed like a random sequence of moments was never random at all. Every unanswered question, every strange feeling, every unexpected pause was quietly leading toward a single realization. Stay close, because the next chapter reveals what happened after your soulmate finally accepted the truth they could no longer deny. They didn't break down because they discovered perfection. They broke down because they discovered authenticity. For a long time, they believed honesty had become rare. They had learned to expect hidden motives behind kind words and empty promises behind beautiful conversations. That belief became a shield around their heart. It kept them safe. But it also kept them distant from genuine connection. Then you entered the picture. Without trying to impress anyone, you kept choosing the same path. Your actions stayed consistent. Your words matched your decisions. Even when life became difficult, you didn't abandon your values. They watched those moments carefully, almost hoping to find a contradiction that would justify their doubts. But it never came. Instead, every passing day quietly erased another layer of fear they had carried for years. One evening, while reflecting on everything they had witnessed, they realized something unexpected. The person they had been silently observing had already answered every question without ever knowing there was a question in the first place. That realization overwhelmed them. Not because it solved every mystery, but because it restored something they thought they had lost forever: belief. For the first time in a long while, they imagined what life could look like if trust became stronger than fear. That single thought opened a door inside them they had kept locked for far too long. Can you imagine carrying heavy doubts for years? And then discovering that one person's quiet consistency is enough to make you believe again? Sometimes the loudest transformation happens in complete silence. No audience. No applause. Just one heart realizing it doesn't have to hide anymore. As they replayed every memory, even the smallest details became meaningful. The time you chose honesty instead of convenience. The moment you remained calm when others expected a different reaction. The occasions where your integrity spoke louder than your words. Those memories formed a picture they could no longer ignore. And that was the exact moment emotions overflowed. Not out of sadness. Not out of regret. But out of relief. Relief that goodness still exists. Relief that sincerity is still possible. Relief that they had not stopped believing too late. If this message resonates with you, let your thoughts meet ours in the comments. Stories like this often remind different hearts that quiet strength still matters. And if these messages continue to encourage your journey, becoming part of this growing community by subscribing simply means we'll continue walking this path together. But don't leave just yet. Because something even more surprising happened after those tears. Once the weight of doubt disappeared, a new question quietly took its place. What should I do now? That question echoed through every thought they had. Should they remain silent? Should they wait? Or should they finally stop hiding what their heart had been trying to say all along? The answer didn't arrive immediately. Instead, life began arranging small moments that neither of you could have predicted. Tiny coincidences, unexpected conversations, perfectly timed opportunities, each one gently moving the story forward, almost as if an invisible hand was connecting pieces that had always belonged together. Nothing felt rushed. Nothing felt forced. Everything unfolded with remarkable patience. And that patience carried a purpose. Because before two paths can truly move forward together, both hearts must first become ready to recognize what has been standing in front of them all along. The next chapter begins with a decision your soulmate never imagined they would have the courage to make. And when that decision finally arrives, it changes far more than either of you expected. Everything is about to become clearer, but not in the way anyone expected. This isn't the kind of story that turns because of one dramatic moment. It changes because one quiet decision becomes impossible to ignore. If you've stayed with this journey until now, don't step away at this point. The next few moments reveal why your soulmate could no longer carry this truth in silence. After the tears settled, something inside them felt completely different. The fear that had once controlled every thought no longer sounded convincing. Instead, another voice became stronger. A calm voice. A hopeful voice. A voice that whispered, "What if it's finally time to stop hiding behind old fears?" For days, they replayed every memory they had collected. They remembered conversations that seemed ordinary at the time but now carried a completely different meaning. They remembered the moments when your honesty remained steady even when taking an easier path would have been tempting. They realized that genuine character isn't revealed during perfect moments, it shines brightest when life becomes complicated. That realization transformed everything. Suddenly, they weren't searching for flaws anymore. They were searching for courage. Courage to trust. Courage to believe. Courage to step toward a future they once thought was impossible. But here's the surprising part. The biggest challenge wasn't wondering who you were. The biggest challenge became wondering whether they were ready to match the honesty they had discovered in you. That question stayed with them every morning and every evening. Can I be just as open? Can I leave the past where it belongs? Can I finally stop expecting disappointment before it even arrives? Those questions didn't weaken them. They strengthened them. Because honest questions often become the beginning of honest change. Take a second and reflect on this. How many opportunities pass by simply because people are waiting for perfect certainty? What if confidence doesn't appear before the first step? What if it grows because of the first step? That thought changed the direction of their entire journey. They realized waiting forever would only create more distance between possibility and reality. Every extra day of silence became heavier than the fear of speaking honestly. Every hidden feeling became another reminder that some stories deserve a chance to move forward. So they made a quiet promise to themselves. No more pretending. No more allowing yesterday's disappointments to define tomorrow's possibilities. No more letting fear write chapters that hope was meant to write instead. That promise didn't create instant answers. It created momentum. And momentum has a remarkable way of opening doors that once looked permanently closed. As they moved forward with this new perspective, something unusual began happening around them. Small moments started feeling meaningful again. Conversations carried unexpected encouragement. Ordinary days suddenly felt filled with possibility. It was almost as if changing one belief had changed the way they noticed the entire world. Sometimes life doesn't change overnight. Sometimes you change. And because you change, everything around you begins to feel different. If this story has stayed with you until this moment, perhaps there's a reason. Perhaps it's reminding you that integrity is never wasted, even when no one seems to notice. The quiet choices you make today may become the very reason someone believes in tomorrow. And then, one final realization arrived. They understood that honesty should never remain trapped inside silent admiration. It deserves expression. It deserves action. It deserves a chance. With a calmer heart and a clearer mind, they prepared themselves for a step they once believed they would never have the courage to take. Not out of impulse, not out of pressure, but because truth had finally become stronger than hesitation. What happened after that decision surprised even them. The moment they chose to reveal what had been hidden for so long, everything began moving toward a future they had never imagined possible. And that is where the next chapter truly begins. The silence is over, but what followed wasn't loud at all. It arrived like the first light before sunrise, gentle, undeniable, and impossible to turn away from. If you've come this far, stay until the final words of this chapter, because this is where hidden emotions finally begin to take shape. Your soulmate stood at a crossroads they had never imagined reaching. On one side was the familiar comfort of silence. On the other was the uncertainty of honesty. For years, silence had protected them. It demanded nothing. It risked nothing. But now, after discovering the truth about your character, that same silence began to feel heavier than any conversation they could possibly have. Every heartbeat seemed to ask the same question. What if I let this opportunity disappear? That question echoed louder each day. They realized something remarkable. The greatest risk was no longer opening their heart. The greatest risk was never knowing what could have happened if they had been brave enough to take one genuine step forward. So instead of searching for the perfect moment, They decided to become ready for whatever moment life presented. That decision changed everything. Not because the world suddenly transformed overnight, but because their perspective did. They stopped looking through the lens of old disappointments. They started looking through the lens of possibility. And when your perspective changes, even ordinary moments begin carrying extraordinary meaning. A simple conversation feels different. A familiar place feels new. A passing memory suddenly becomes a sign that growth has already begun. As these quiet changes unfolded, they found themselves smiling without realizing it. They remembered moments they once overlooked and now understood why those memories refused to fade. They weren't random. They were reminders. Reminders that honesty leaves an impression long after words are forgotten. Think about that for a moment. People may forget what was said. They may forget where they were. But they rarely forget how someone's character made them feel. That is the kind of impression you quietly left behind. Without applause. Without seeking attention. Simply by remaining true to yourself. And that realization became one of the strongest reasons they could no longer hide behind fear. If this story has encouraged you in some way, we'd love to hear what part connected with you the most. Reading your thoughts helps this community grow through shared encouragement. And if you'd like to continue hearing stories filled with hope, purpose, and meaningful reflections, subscribing is simply a way to stay connected for the next journey together. But this isn't the ending. It's the beginning of something neither of you expected. Because once they accepted what their heart already knew, life began placing unexpected opportunities in front of them. Not dramatic miracles. Not impossible coincidences. Just meaningful moments. Moments where courage could quietly replace hesitation. Moments where honesty could finally speak louder than fear. They understood there would never be a perfect script for what came next. There would only be sincerity. And sometimes, sincerity is more powerful than perfect words. As they took another step forward, they carried no expectations of certainty. Only one quiet hope. That the same honesty they had discovered in you would continue guiding whatever came next. Little did they know. The next chapter would have brought a meeting, a conversation, or a turning point that neither heart could have predicted. And when that moment finally arrived, it wouldn't simply answer old questions. It would begin writing an entirely new story. A new chapter quietly begins, and this is the moment where everything that once felt uncertain starts moving with unexpected clarity. Don't leave now, because what happens next isn't about coincidence. It's about the quiet power of one decision creating a ripple that reaches farther than either of you imagined. After choosing courage over hesitation, your soulmate stopped asking, "What if I'm wrong?" Instead, they began asking a far more important question. What if this is the opportunity I've been waiting for all along? That single thought changed the atmosphere around them. The fear that once felt overwhelming became smaller. Hope became stronger. And every passing day reminded them that honesty is never something to regret. They no longer looked back searching for mistakes. They looked ahead searching for possibilities. It was a peaceful transformation. One that happened quietly. One that happened naturally. One that couldn't be rushed. Then something remarkable happened. They noticed that every memory connected to you carried the same feeling. Peace. Not excitement that disappears overnight. Not emotions built on uncertainty. But a calm confidence they had almost forgotten was possible. That realization stayed with them. It followed them through ordinary mornings. It appeared during quiet evenings. It even found its way into the smallest moments of reflection. They finally understood why your honesty had touched them so deeply. Because honesty creates safety. Safety creates trust. And trust allows hearts to believe in tomorrow again. Pause for just a second. How often does the world celebrate appearance while quietly overlooking character? Yet when life truly matters, character becomes the foundation that everything else depends on. That is exactly what they discovered. Your greatest impression wasn't created by perfect words. It was created by consistent actions. Those actions became impossible to ignore. They realized something else that surprised even them. While they thought they had been observing you, they had actually been changing themselves. Every lesson they learned about your integrity slowly encouraged them to become more open,